Greetings. Welcome to the Gundam Explained Show Live. I am Batman. And joining me is Steven of Midnight Hatter. Steven, how are you?
I don't know who this Steven is, but I'm Venom Snake.
Oh, Venom Snake. My notes here say, Steven, is this some sort of trick? Are you the Joker? You are the Joker. You must be. Alfred, send in the Batmobile. Okay, enough with that. That was fun. You know what? And the reason I'm saying enough with that, because I need to get this mask off because it is hot. But like I was saying, welcome to the Gundam Explained Show.
And you are I was going to say, you're the second Adam with a 4-letter last name to don the Batman costume.
Oh, that's right. Adam West.
There you go.
That's right. That is right. And, 20 years ago when I was skinnier and super white as I am, I looked exactly like Edward, or that actor. I got to get this off. I'm telling you, it's been fun. This makeup is going to take forever to come off. So for those that aren't, or they're just listening, I started this show as Batman.
And now you've got, the Edward Cullen look, or I guess, well, he's Bruce Wayne technically, but from the Batman, Robert
Pattinson. That's his name. Okay, I'm going to try to take this thing off. Hold on. I feel better. Now I'm just wearing some black spandex. Okay, well, you know what? We did this because it is Halloween, but I got to say your costume is awesome. I was not expecting that.
Like I said, I didn't put a ton of effort into it, but it serves two purposes, because obviously one of my favorite characters of all time, Punished Snake, but also it's my weekly reminder to Adam to finally freaking play Metal Gear Solid 5.
I know. Dude, it's so funny because I remember the other day I was trying to think of something to play that's a little different. I'm like, man, what should I play? I know there's something I've been meaning to play, and it was that. It was
MGSV.
Let me adjust this just a little bit. But no, guys, everyone, welcome to this. We're going to have a fun show today because it is Halloween. And so we did our Halloween thing. Did you do a Halloween thing?
Yeah, took the kiddo out trick-or-treating. She didn't make it to very many houses because, tiny legs, but.
Oh, okay. What was she dressed up as?
She was a cat. And actually, I did her face paint. Like, we did our face paint together. She did the scars on my face for Venom Snake, and I did her, like, whiskers and her little cat nose and everything. So that was fun.
That is fun. Yeah, we went with a neighbor to another neighborhood. This neighborhood doesn't have as many kids. It's older kind of, but I mean, there's a lot of very young kids. So it's like one of those where pretty soon it's going to then have more, they just built the elementary school a few years ago over here. But so we went to another one just down the street, dropped my son. He's 11. He was the only one that's really going, and they were just playing soccer in the backyard. And so, now I'm back here. My wife went over there so we can do the Gundam Explained show live. As always, it doesn't matter what's happening.
Rain, sleet, or snow.
But yeah, so I wanted to bring up something that was really awesome, and that was your show yesterday, which that was just fun. So fun. And especially because it went on for so long. And to be honest, I'd love that, even though I was like getting tired and trying to hold on. But when you can, especially when it's 5 people, and to be able to talk for so long, I think it's awesome.
And I'm glad that we had the opportunity to kind of let it breathe a little bit. But yeah, definitely not what we're used to, being kind of like interviewed on our own show, right?
Well, I love that too, because we talk about that stuff every once in a while, but then sometimes we go a while not talking about that stuff, and then maybe there's new people that are watching the show. And so
that's why I was like, I'm down for this, because one of the things about content creation that I've been kind of learning lately, or I guess relearning technically, is that people need to be reminded more than they need to be told, right? So like, as a content creator, you definitely need to get into the habit of repeating yourself, not because and you're going to start to sound like a broken record, because there's even the people that regularly watch, it might be 3 or 4 times that you say something that then they pick it up and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, so he did say that. And so that's why I don't mind saying like, "Hey, I say it 100 times, like, I'm a Zeta guy." Like, that's
Yeah. And yeah, you're right, because it's kind of cool to set that context, especially with the conversation with a lot of people. Because if then
Mhm.
those others know in the Undergated, I forgot if I said the name Undergated podcast, you can
Yeah.
check them out.
Undergated Network.
uh, Undergated Network, okay, on YouTube, and they have their Instagram. So your show from yesterday in the description has everyone's Instagram. So that's how I
Mhm.
went and followed them. Really cool, diverse group of guys because they all have their own thing they're into. Like Coop was really into robot spirits. I don't normally come across people that are
I
like that.
know, like, yeah, that was, like, the kindred spirit there, and then, like, yeah, Austin, I mean, just a he comes by his sci-fi love naturally, right? Like, his dad kind of, like, raised him
Yeah,
from a young age
reminded
to
me of like with my dad because I remember watching all the Star Treks with my dad too. Like that whole time, I remember we would always record Voyager just in case we would miss it and all that. And I like how there's very similar tastes in like some of the UC stuff we were like, especially like he likes AOZ stuff.
Yeah,
And then
and then CD.
CD,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I liked his sort of style because he was one where it's like everything I paint. It's like
right.
everything is painted because the colors aren't correct, you
Right,
know?
and
Yeah.
for him, he said as much where it was like, "Look, for me, it's all about the suits." He's like, "The story's great and all, but, like, it's all about the suits at the end of the day," and that's why, of everyone, like, he's the least, like, tied to UC stuff because even though UC may have the best story, it's like, well, the best mobile suits are from here, and that's what I'm into. So,
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, it's like everyone kind of gets into Gundam for different reasons, and I think it's great that we are able to find those kind of like threads that we have in common. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so fun time, guys. If you haven't, check it out. And also, you might hear the dog as trick-or-treaters come by. We don't have any more candy, though, because we put it out. And I guess my wife caught on camera kids dumping the whole thing in there. She went out and talked. My wife's that type. Like, if you try to put one over her, she will let you know. So, yeah, I know from
these
experience.
kids need to know, man. It's
Yeah.
disrespectful.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. I mean, she even puts a little note, just, leave for
Yeah,
others.
take two pieces and go.
Yeah, yeah, so you might hear the dogs barking, blah blah blah, whatever. But anyway, so I dropped a video earlier this week of wait, first it was that GM and Gundam EX battle,
Yeah,
you know,
it was the duel between
yeah,
the
because
Gundam
that's
pilot and
neat
yeah,
that there was a situation that occurred where you can see that, starter kind of GM model go up against a technically kind of prototype Gundam. I mean, we don't know too many details yet. I wonder if they will come out with some sort of, I don't know if compendium is the word, but come out with something that sort of gives
yeah.
lore.
Have we seen any? Because I don't have the model kits yet, but, like, have we seen
Oh,
in the
the
model kit
manual.
books, is there anything in the manual about
That is
the
a good point, and I bet that's online. And the wikis haven't had anything updated. I mean, not that they're the most reliable, but usually people just throw whatever they find on there. I didn't see anything there, but one reason I like to do these battle videos is because a big part of watching Gundam for me is mobile suit battles. So me be recording myself, kind of walking through, and okay, this is interesting. Look, it could do that. It kind of sticks with me. So then, as I'm watching future stuff, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. And then, so when I make further videos, I can kind of maybe hold on to that knowledge to kind of really dive into details.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I'm really glad you went into that kind of like as almost like a fight breakdown because,
Yeah.
I come from enjoying like pro wrestling, right? And so one
Oh,
of the
yeah.
things about like a wrestler like Bret Hart is famous for being very methodical in his wrestling style where it's like he's trying to tell a story in the fight, right? And so
Wow.
like, his finishing move is a submission hold. He does the sharpshooter. He's got you tied up with your legs, right? So when you see him like hitting someone in the knee over and over, it's like, oh, he's weakening him so that when he puts his finishing move on him, it makes him more susceptible to giving up. And so what people don't and I'm sorry, I can get way into the weeds when it comes to like storytelling tactics, but like it's
Yeah.
the same thing that you and I talk about how there's storytelling in gameplay when you're playing a video game. There is storytelling that happens in a fight that is beyond what the dialogue says, beyond what the stakes are, and you can break that down based on like the emotion that's on people's faces and like what moves they're trying to do. And like so I mean, shoot, when the Gundam gun comes around and, like, the Gatling gun, like, that is one of those, like, pivotal moments of, like, "Oh," that was something that they didn't account for, so,
Yeah,
I
it's like jujitsu,
ex
what I think. But
perfect
I
example, yeah.
like the thing about Bret Hart because I remember I've never been into wrestling, but I remember when Bret Hart was popular, I always heard about that. Bret Hitman Hart, right? Isn't
Yeah,
that yeah, and then there was that arcade game from Acclaim that
yeah,
was, like, really good, yeah. But no, that's true, like, that's what's cool about the battles is, like, why do they go to a certain weapon?
mhm,
Like, it's really cool at that point, you could use the beam rifle, and he did that to quickly take out well, almost, because I guess the guy kinda survived, but, um, there's a lot of times where that Gundam EX is just using his sabers because he can do really good work with it.
mhm.
Even, at that with that GM battle, cutting off the one arm and then the arm and the head, like, real quick, and it's, like, interesting how and I brought this up in the video. It's like there's so many times maybe he could have aimed for the cockpit and just didn't because he's feeling that pressure, that
Mhm.
pressure. And I love that. And I need to explore that more in some videos because, like, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about how the new type stuff didn't really make sense in this. And I'm like, well, it kind of did, but maybe it's
Did.
because we don't really talk about it a lot beyond the very fantastical.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if you think about it in terms of like, we love making the comparison between Gundam and Star Wars, and it's like typically the Jedi move is to cut off limbs, like to literally disarm people to make them, to take away their combat effectiveness,
Yeah.
right? And that's exactly what he did with his beam saber is like, okay, I'm going to strip this weapon of all of its
Yeah.
armament, literally take its arms off, take its head off so that it can't see anymore, and I don't have to kill the pilot because then she's
Yeah.
rendered defenseless.
Right.
And compare that to the end when the Goof drives the
Oh,
heat saber
straight through.
straight through the cockpit because that clearly an old type pilot doesn't think with the idea that like, oh, I'm going to try and
Yeah.
so I find that stuff fascinating, and to your
I do too.
point, I think that those are the types of new type explorations that typically I don't wanna say they go over people's heads, but I think that
They're subtle, so
they're
it's not necessarily talked about.
yeah,
Especially when I was watching the original Mobile Suit Gundam, and there's just a scene of Mirai just staring,
mhm,
and then Bright's like, "Do you sense something?" Or, "What's wrong?" Not that you sense, she's like, "What's wrong?" And she's just staring.
mhm,
It's not animated, it's not saying anything, and it's like, "Oh, something's happening." Or all of a sudden it'll be like, "Oh, do you feel that?" But they're not explaining what it is. You just know, okay, as a new type, there's some sort of brainwave activity occurring. So, yeah, I think I
mhm.
want to get into that stuff more too. But the other video I dropped too was of the Robot Spirits Mark II for
Yeah, the
anime.
Mark IIs, man.
Okay, so
Sweet.
yeah, I had so many. Did you think one looked better than the others?
I mean, I guess, like, let me, couch my opinion in I do appreciate how, like, the newer models, they're incorporating more articulation to get those, like, anime accurate poses,
Mhm.
but, I actually don't like anime accurate poses, if only because and you see this with, like, the real grade Gundam 2.0, you get, like, these weird hinges that are exposed just to get the shoulder to turn
Yeah,
around, and so it's like, while I appreciate all of the mechanics and the engineering that went into doing that, I'm like,
it's
"Mm,
not. And I was thinking that too. As I was like posing it in the video, I was like, okay, so it goes out this far, but then I was thinking, well, you would then probably have to make sure you're posing it in a way where it's not showing that exposed part, or
yeah,
like because if it's just all exposed like that, it just kind of looks weird how there's just kind of all these joints sticking out. So yeah, you kind of have to do it in a way where you're making use of it to do a pose, but without exposing. And I think it was like that with was it the G 70 or 80, I forget. There was that other or there was an RX 78 2 that came out that had, like, crazy articulation.
Yeah, both, I mean, the G40 has
Or
pretty good
G40.
articulation, but the Beyond Global
Oh, Beyond, that's the one I'm
yeah,
talking about, yeah.
that one has probably the most interesting articulation I've ever seen in the wrist, where, like, the wrist actually pops out of its joint and allows you to, like, hinge the wrist on a
Yeah,
ball joint, which is pretty cool.
it is cool because if you think about doing, especially holding a weapon, there are some times where I wish, the wrist would almost hinge kind of, uh, against the forearm so it can kinda carry the gun correctly. Man, it's like I need to
Yeah.
scratch my eyes, but, like, I don't wanna get paint all over me. Um, no, but,
I'm committed
the
to the bit. This is wicked uncomfortable, but I'm
yeah, I know you're even wearing an eye patch. No, but yeah, yeah, I'm actually excited about building that 2.0 because yeah, I released the video of the Mark II because originally I thought I would have the video up for the Sinanju, but there are so many decals, so many water slide decals. I think more than any other I've done, and I don't know if that's true, and I just forgot because I like that generally. But
yeah, I love having the option, but, typically, I'm not big into, like, over decals, like
oh
yeah.
yeah, I guess it depends. Like when it's like the way it is on the Verka, and excuse me, I gotta scratch myself. Feel better. With the Verka, it's almost like it's made to look that way.
Yeah.
So as I was like putting decals, I was like, you know what? I'll stop here. I was like, no, I feel like I should do the whole thing. I've already put this much work into it. You know, I feel like I'd rather get all the rest of the decals on. So I'm almost done. And the thing is, there's so many decals, and there are just sometimes this happens where they'll not really dry correctly and will kind
Yeah.
of bubble up, but then I'll put water on it still. But I think it like something to do with maybe the adhesion or whatever is gone. But I'm gonna go over it with a top coat when I'm done
Okay.
anyway. And I
So I
feel
was
like
gonna ask, like, are you? Because I mean, the way I would typically do it would be to, like, do it in sections where it's like, "Okay, I'm gonna do, like, the left arm, hit all of the decals on the left arm, top coat it. Then I'll do, like, the leg, all the decals on that, top coat it." But you're doing the entire kit and then top coating the entire kit?
yeah. Although I kind of like your idea. I was doing it in the very chaotic way that shouldn't be done, where I'm like, big sticker, little smaller sticker. Okay, and I'm like going in order of the like I'll get the number, the emblem, and then I start going to look. Oh, it's like, am I going to really do these little ones? And then if I don't, it's like, oh, I have to. And because it's a Verka,
Yeah.
like, and this one, I can't wait to talk about it in the review. It was a great build, and it's so sturdy. I haven't had anything fall off on it yet, except the fingers actually, because it's those articulated
Ooh, yeah.
ones. Yeah, but yeah. Luckily, it comes with a hand that is static to
Molded.
hold a gun.
Yeah.
So,
That's good.
um, yeah. So I get, and you already built the real grade 2.0.
Yeah, I've got it, right here next to the real grade Zaku,
That might
on the
not
shelf back
show up
there.
actually. Yeah, but no. So what did you think of the build process?
I thought it was great. I mean, it went faster than any real grade that I've ever built, and I think part of that's just
Oh,
it's a low complexity build.
oh, you think they
One of
refined it as
well,
part of being an update?
I don't think so. I think that just the Granddaddy Gundam doesn't have a lot of, like, extra bells and whistles on it.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
coming from something like the Epion, which was the last real grade that I built, shout out to Zeeg New York for sending that to us. The
Yeah.
wings, the articulation in the wings, there's so many little hinges. So each of those wings is like a 15-20 minute process,
Yeah.
to
You
get
know
those
what?
built.
That was a good build too. It had more
Mhm.
unique things going on, but the real grades really do hit it. But man, as soon as I'm done with Sinanju, and I'm going to be working on that Mark II, I'm going to be doing a video on it. I think I want to get the narrative for COD next
Yeah,
because I
that's
really like that
syntax.
design, and I'd like to have them together. And I was shopping for Gunpla stands, not people that are but love Gunpla. I was shopping for the action
I'm
bases.
not sure that you can buy those online, but
No, but the action bases. Do you, off the top of your head, have an action base preference?
I don't, but part of that is because I 3D print and make action bases.
Oh yeah, there
So
you go.
that's it yeah, it's a little unfair, because there are so many different options out there, right? Like, you have the Bandai, the typical, like, the gray they make them in a lot of colors, but it's like the standard Action Base 2, I think it is, um, but there is one that I picked up on Amazon years ago that is actually kind of interesting because it's about the size of an iPad, and it's got, like a clear plastic liner in it, and so you can swap out, like, a card, like, if you wanted to print out, like, a little card to kind of
Oh, a
it's a
label display thing or something.
yeah, something like that, so, I don't know.
Yeah. So
What
I,
about
you
you? I
know,
mean, you have,
so
like, a one that you like?
yeah, I think today or just recently I came down to, let me grab it real quick. It's the uh and I don't know if they make them like this
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
It's the action-based one, but usually it's smaller, and this is like just a square piece that's sticking out for this to go on. But this had a larger bottom too. I wonder if it says underneath in here. I don't. I okay. I have two of these that I had with my old Master Grade 2.0 Zaku 2 and or Char Zaku 2 and RX 78 2. Um, and this has been out of all the ones I have, this has been the only one to not fall apart on me.
Well, there you
Like,
go.
you know how sometimes you'll just have it on there and then like
It just, like,
it'll,
flops over.
yeah, and actually this uses a screw.
That I
Yeah.
do like ones that have some kind of, screw or, like, ratchet mechanism that holds them in place.
Yeah.
This here is my favorite, action base right now, the Zeeg New York special here.
Okay, and so did you even print the actual uh
So, I have a printed one that works with it, but this is actually one of the ones that came with that action base too that I
uh
was talking about. And again, to your point, that little stand on it has like these little teeth that grip onto so you can kind of set the post at any angle that is suitable for your kit.
and those though those I think are the new default standard, but
Yeah.
I don't think they're as sturdy.
Well, they have an Allen wrench in them and like a screw on one side. So I think that they just
Oh,
need to be tightened when you find like when you put them in place. But you're right, they are tensioned. They're not like they don't have like a tooth in them that like
yeah.
holds
I
it in place.
and that's why like while I was working on the Sinanji Stein, I was having it displayed on this, and for one, it just I'm trying to buy them now for all my master grades. I feel like master grades on a stand just look better than just standing there.
I
Um,
agree.
and yeah, so I was trying to find the best ones, and I love this one. But yeah, I'll have to shop around some more. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, yeah, I can't wait to actually put stands on all of mine because I just think it will just display better. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean, like even for any 1/100 scale kit, like I've got the Zeta and RE100 Bawu on the shelf behind me, and like the Zeta tail binder I have propped against the wall because it's the only way I can keep it standing without toppling over. So it's like the
Ah, okay. I just moved it over on the screen. Okay. Yeah, yeah, cool. I like that shelf with the lights. Yeah,
hey,
yeah,
thank you.
I want to be a little more deliberate with my display instead of just
Yeah,
like lining them up,
I
that
definitely
way.
want to give this whole set a zhuzh because I love that you got the detolf behind you.
Yeah, no, that is pretty cool. But it with and maybe this has to do with me understanding lighting when I'm streaming, but when I turn on that light, it then kind of ruins the rest of the light. So,
Mm,
and it's not dimmable, so
dang.
not too big of a deal. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the title of this show being about like is Requiem for Vengeance a Halloween series movie. So,
Wow,
like
and you know what's interesting is it's like so you're the spirit of vengeance, Batman, and I am, the phantom pain solid snake that's out for vengeance. And we're talking about Requiem for Vengeance. It seems like revenge is a theme around tonight's show that we didn't even plan.
now is revenge and vengeance the same thing?
Ooh, that's a good question. And
Could
I know that Batman himself would probably debate that what he does is justice, not revenge.
yeah, exactly.
Even though there's that iconic line from the animated series, right? "I'm vengeance, I'm the night."
Right. That's why when I was a kid and I'd hear him say vengeance, I always felt like that was a kinder way to take revenge, almost like it's a justified justice. Like you
Yeah.
were saying, it's like a justified revenge.
Well, so it's like what's the difference between revenge and avenge, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Then there's that too. Like avenge. Like I will avenge your you never hear a bad guy say that. That it's usually the good guys like I will avenge. Or maybe a bad guy would say it that
I
is
mean, they
trying
would
to
say it to themselves because we're all
yeah,
the good guy in our own story, right?
exactly.
Like
Yeah. No, yeah, then uh I'd say okay, Halloween stuff. So for instance, and this actually started for me last year when last Halloween or right before, I forget, it was around that time because I was Alucard because I got heavy back into Castlevania because I had watched that first season and then didn't watch the rest. And then for Halloween last year or October, I watched the rest and I was like, the Castlevania anime is perfect for Halloween time just because it's Dracula stuff and
The
it's
gothic horror.
yeah,
It's
the
like,
gothic
yeah.
horror, but action because I
Mhm.
like the action on top of it. Um, and Eltronimus is saying revenge is for yourself, avenge is for another.
There you go.
So what about vengeance? That's what I'm interested in. Oh, here we go from MoFlyer. Requiem of Vengeance is not a Halloween show. It's another Xeon apologist anime, like Devil 83 and MS Igloo. Uh, I don't know about apologist, but maybe just like a being able to
Yeah.
write from a different perspective.
Well, it's so funny. I love that whenever anything that's not clear like Federation are the good guys comes out, there's that tired meme of like, oh, here comes the fascist apologia, right? And it's like, but if you watch the original show, and I love pointing this out to people, is it's like, in the original prologue part where it's like, it has been 1 year since the War
Oh,
of Independence was declared. It says both sides were responsible for half of humanity being wiped out, and it
yeah,
says humanity was, what was it? It's like they were astounded at their own actions. It doesn't even say in the name of independence, it just says humanity was what was appalled by their own actions, and so it's like, there's the implication there that there's no well, that all sides in war are the bad guy, right?
right. And
For a
yeah,
kids show, you
that's
have to have good guys and bad guys, but
yeah, and I think at the same time, there's always, and I think this is true in all war, is that there are people that are just caught up in it just because that's how they were born. That's where they were, and so it's like there's all those little things. Like for me, I keep saying this. I love the ending of Requiem for Vengeance because it's like
mhm,
we got sympathy for this character, but at the end of the day, she's
she's still,
she's a Xeon, so she's going to
yeah,
fight. So she was in that culture of.
mhm.
Anyway, I want to point out something. Lucas Garrett is here in the chat, and while you were
Oh, wait.
talking, thank you for talking because it allowed me to set up the chat
Hey, there we go.
here.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you. You knew what I was trying to do. This is great. I am so glad Lucas Garrett said this because this further goes down what I feel of Halloween. Like he's saying, it's definitely a Halloween horror flick. And remember, Gundam Requiem for Vengeance takes place in Romania, home of Vlad Tepes, also known as Dracula, which
There
is
you
such
go.
a good point. That
Man, I didn't even
I
think about that.
yeah. And it's funny because when I was talking to Gavin Hignite and I was talking about it seems like it's horror. Oh, and it's coming out October. He goes, well, that wasn't intended, but I think it worked out.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know?
and I mean, even the mobile suits designer, of the Gundam was like, "Oh, yeah, the Gundam is supposed to look skeletal." The
Yeah.
reason that it's got, like, so many exposed, it's like it looks like a rib cage instead of looking like a traditional Gundam torso. So there's this, like, there's this hor even the design of the jaw of the Gundam, like, if you look at it, yeah, it's reminiscent of the Easy-8, but it also looks like a skeleton's, like, the
Yeah.
bone, that jawbone. So it's really cool the way that this sort of these visual cues kind of inform the mood of what the story is supposed to be about.
Yeah. And with us not even expecting that. Hold on a second. You mind if you talk for a second? Because I think I'm getting a important call.
Oh yeah, no, happy to.
Um,
So
yeah.
yeah, with regard to Requiem for Vengeance being a Halloween story, and I think part of it is wishful thinking, right? Because we all know that there's plenty of Gundam stories that are Christmas stories, right? And we always want there to be a holiday for every for every series, and it goes back to kind of like, oh, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Yes and no, right? Like I know I watched Die Hard at Christmas. I would be
False
interested.
alarm. All good. Just because the kid's out and my wife went to go with the other kids. Anyway, so yeah, kind of going back to this, like, so yeah, when something is Halloweeny, like, does it mean it has to be horror, or can it just evoke?
So that goes to what I was saying is like,
Okay.
I was like, we want there to be a Gundam Halloween show to match up with like the Gundam Christmas shows because it's like,
Oh
is
yeah,
Die Hard a Christmas movie, even though
yeah,
there's not a lot of Christmas imagery in it? Well, it's like it's set at Christmas. It's a
yeah.
Christmas party that he's breaking up. So it's like,
If the Christmas party wasn't happening,
yeah.
it wouldn't have happened. Yeah. And
Um,
so, but yeah, you could look at then what would be different than with Gundam. Oh, and that's what's actually interesting about Christmas movie versus a Halloween movie or show is Christmas is more of the aesthetic. Sure,
mhm,
maybe there's something about giving or being with family, but I think for like something that would be Halloween like was a lot of times horror movies are released around October anyway, or it just usually around Halloween time, people are like, okay, I'm gonna go binge Friday the 13th. I remember I did that a few years ago. I went through all the that's why I in the thumbnail I called it Jason X or EX. And
yeah.
there's the Jason X movie. And I
Jason Goes to Space.
yeah, which I loved. I was ready for that at that point.
Honestly, I'm glad that they kind of did that to just to get him out of a camp, right? Like to put him
Yeah.
in a different environment. And so, okay, Adam, let me ask you,
Yeah.
our this is our new tradition of asking the host questions instead of instead
Okay.
of the other way
I like
around.
it.
No, so how do you feel about the tradition of like horror movies coming out on Christmas? Like
It's
that's
been
been like
happening
a thing.
lately, even
Yeah.
Christmas horror movies a lot lately. I don't know if you've noticed there's been like Santa like horror flicks like
Yep.
Krampus or the ones where the Santa just is a badass and he's just fighting people. I like that because I think that just goes to it's on one hand, I think it's maybe a cool idea or a studio knowing, oh, this will make money, but it really taps into people wanting unique things that are familiar to them, but are put together. Like horror is like a fake way to evoke, or is a way to evoke like fake fear. You
Mhm.
don't normally feel that in your life. It's kind of a way to like get high on a drug. You know what I mean? Like you don't normally feel those things unless it's evoked to you in some way. You're normally, depending on what you go through your life. I understand some people maybe have gone through true horror, but like sometimes watching a horror movie can kind of evoke that. But then
Oh,
if
yeah.
you add the Christmas where you feel comfortable and happy, and then
I'm gonna use the triggering phrase of subverting
yeah,
expectations, right? It's like
yeah,
we typically like the warm and fuzzies around Christmas, but, I think that there's something, I don't know, there's something taboo about feeling that kind of horror element in
yeah,
during Christmas time, right? And
yeah,
to your point, yeah, I mean, I think that people, obviously, it's the whole reason that we consume fiction media in general is to feel feelings that maybe we don't necessarily always wanna feel. Like, I don't always want to feel sad or, like, guilty or
right.
things, but there are certain films that it's like, "Wow," I love watching that movie even if it makes me feel sad. Um, there's actually a Doctor Who episode that it's like, obviously set in a future society where people have these like little patches. They're almost like nicotine patches that they put on their neck to feel different emotions.
That's
Like you said,
interesting.
like a drug. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
I want to feel nostalgia right now. Oh man, I miss that.
That
Like,
that's interesting. It's the opposite of that. Did you see that movie Equilibrium? Which I
yeah,
think that's been done in other movies before, but they take the medicine so they don't have emotion.
right.
Yeah, I
There's
thought that
there's a
was
new one coming out that's actually a horror movie, starring I think Adam Scott, where it's like I think it's called Severance. And the premise is that when you go to work and when you come home, they erase your memory
oh,
of
I think
work
that's
from
a
home.
TV show on Apple
Yeah,
TV or something. I haven't watched it.
neither have I, but just the
Oh,
premise of it sounds
yeah,
very
that's
cool,
that's
like,
pretty interesting.
because
Uh,
these are the types of things that we bounce back and forth, right?
yeah, and Lucas Garrett, look at this. Batman vs. Dracula 2005 animated movie. I had no idea. I mean, and
There you go.
Batman has Halloween vibes. I think, yes, Brian Zanichelli was even saying Batman 2022. Yeah, because it's the darkness, the horror, it's the fear. Okay,
Yeah,
I think, yeah, for Halloween it has to be fear associated to it, just because Halloween, a lot of it traditionally, you're wearing costumes that are scary.
mhm.
The traditional things like the ghost, the witch. You're saying trick or treat. What does a trick do? That trick can evoke fear. So I think, yeah, it goes down to movies having that fear, which I think kind of the basis of what the characters are going through in Requiem for Vengeance is fear of. Federation, like Feddies
This
have a mobile suit,
Gundam monster,
and
right?
then yeah, it's just slicing things up and
Well,
yeah,
so it's funny because, like, what the tradition of Halloween is All Hallows Eve, right? You
yeah,
have this, it's the day that, like, that the dead can walk among the living. And so that fear that gets evoked by Halloween is that, like, basically your own skeletons that you have in your closet are coming home to visit you. And so it's like, so there is that element of, like, vengeance of, like, oh man, I hope that I don't have any, like, I hope I don't have a guilty conscience because, like, now the dead are gonna be walking around us for a night. And so I think I mentioned this when we were originally talking about Requiem for Vengeance, is that there's a lot of night battles during that series, and you don't,
yeah.
like, I mean, probably more, the percentage of battles that happen at night in Requiem for Vengeance is greater than any other Gundam series, even with a longer run time, right?
Yeah, and I wonder how hard it is, other than, space battles, but
Mhm.
usually there's not much detail I have to do where, like, battles at night on Earth or in the dark on Earth don't or on land don't really happen as much in space. So it'd be like the matte painting in the background that has blues in it as well, a bunch
Yeah,
of white dots or whatever. Yeah, so I think there's something about that Requiem for Vengeance with the Unreal Engine 5 they can really pull off the nighttime. And
pretty
the other
cool.
thing that's cool too, I mean, we talk about how it looks like Jason, and it's a slasher because he's got his beam saber, but also the trees, the forest, that evokes the camping element that is, in Jason and all that. Um,
And yet there
and
weren't any teenagers getting busy that were getting
yeah, I know, not in that one. Yeah,
that's all
that
we needed was, like, Lieutenant Arhoon to have a to have a scene in the woods.
no, but yeah, so yeah, and I'm trying to think. Yeah, because so the Hulk movie, and I think it was the one with uh,
With Ed Norton?
Ed Norton,
Yeah.
which missed opportunity for him to be a part of the MC. Like, I almost feel like actually it's telling the reason he wasn't in any more MCU movies because of the direction MCU was kind of going. No shit on
Mhm.
MCU, but it was more of these are more of like a whole like kind of executive production.
Right. I think that, for the same reason that, like, Joaquin Phoenix was in on the Joker movies, because Todd Phillips said, like, "No, no, we're gonna make a real movie. We're just gonna put this superhero skin on it so that we can sell it," right?
Yeah.
Edward Norton was trying to get that same thing where it was like, "No, no, I wanna make real movies, but we wanna put the superhero skin on it so that we can sell it." And then when he realized, like, "Oh, no, this is just like a marketing machine," like,
Yeah. But what and so that was interesting about that. I liked that movie. And I think it's overlooked. Like, right? Isn't it? Is that even considered part of the MC? It's still considered MCU because it has some of the characters.
I think they even reference it in, like, the Avengers movie, like, Mark Ruffalo talks about, like, the suicide attempt that
Right, exactly.
yeah.
There's a part in that movie, I think they're in the warehouse in Brazil, isn't it like the soda warehouse or
Mhm.
something, where he becomes like a monster,
Mhm.
where, like, you don't see him, like, the guys are in the warehouse and then they're, like, getting pulled, and to me, I was like, "That makes sense," because the Hulk is kind of a monster. Now these guys are fearing him, because you would fear something like that even though it's a good guy,
Oh, yeah.
so I love it when we see, and that's kind of the subverting thing you're talking about, where you take something you're familiar with. Here's another idea. I have written a story about, like, think of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but like one of the guys that happens to get caught up in everything is like a Secret Service special agent.
Well, it kinda sounds like you're describing, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Did you ever see that movie?
Well, is that the one where maybe I haven't?
Where, Alan Tudyk and I forget the other actor's name, but they're, like, a couple of hillbillies that are on a fishing trip in the woods, and then a bunch of college kids are, like, out camping,
Oh,
and
they get themselves killed?
they get themselves killed, and
Yeah,
it's like,
okay.
so the college kids are the
The
slasher
yeah.
killers, and,
Well, no, but the idea here would be you would set up the movie where you're so scared of, for instance, Leatherface and the family, like all that horror, the cannibalism and all that, and that they're like killing people one by one. But this one dude just happened to evade it so far, but he's also a badass. So by the end of the film, he has like obliterated them. And in this script I wrote, it actually takes place like in between Germany and France, like some countryside where rich people will go to this diner because they're being served human meat. It's like a delicacy,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's getting
Most
sourced
dangerous
by
game.
oh yeah, yeah, it's getting sourced by this family of kind of whatever hillbillies would be in Europe, countryside people that would capture people, and they would capture people from uh what did I write in it? The changing rooms in malls, like a
Oh,
clothing
yeah.
store,
Sure,
and
yeah.
then there would be like false walls, and people would be kidnapped. And so
God.
this secret agent dude, and in my mind, it was Timothy Dalton the whole time. By the way, he was visiting friends in France, and the guy's wife goes missing while going shopping. So now he's putting on a secret agent, and he tracks down this farmhouse where they're
That's James
capturing
Bond, by the way.
it's pretty
Like,
much yeah, and it's pretty much James Bond just fighting Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But yeah, I had it to where by the end of it, he had called in special forces, and so like you see these helicopters come in, drop, so they can. It's like by the end of the movie, like the whole movie, you're feeling scared for everybody, and it's disgusting, it's horrible. Then by the end of it, you get redemption, but through a badass, you know.
okay.
And,
I'm
and you
picking
know
up
what?
what you're putting down.
Yeah, I need to revisit that. But then that remind me of something else. Uh, what was it? So where I live, there's a lot of people from India that also live in the area because by the
Interesting.
airport.
Yeah.
A lot of
Oh, it
people
makes
come.
sense. Yeah. Got you.
So the
So, like,
movie
transport
theaters,
hub.
yeah, the movie theaters will have a lot of Indian movies, and to be honest, they're pretty awesome looking. And there's this one. It's called Bagheera, which
Oh,
is I think the name of like the panther and Jungle Book, but I think that's just panther and Indian maybe or something.
mhm.
But it's like Batman. It's a guy that he's just in all black, not in like a superhero. I guess there's some scenes that showed like he had a mask on, but like you never see his face, and you just see him like in the trailer, just randomly showing up places and beating the crap out of people, even showing him with a sword, stabbing it through the back of a guy's head, coming out his mouth.
Oh, so definitely, no kill rule
Right.
like Batman.
But I was like, "Oh, that's awesome," because what this is it's a quote unquote good guy superhero, trying to defend it's like the drug dealers
Yeah.
or
It's like
sex
Punisher.
trafficking. Yeah. What's that?
It's like the Punisher, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's that, but like a superhero because they show him like on the roof holding a machete and he has the mask and he's wearing all black. And that's like, you know what? That I dig that stuff. That's kind of like Batman. And I think
Yeah.
that's why Batman works on Halloween. And I think what's funny is it was Batman Returns that was Christmas.
Yep.
Right, and that worked too, even with the marketing having the
But
white
again, the Halloween on Christmas thing, I mean, shoot, it's a song lyric, right? Blink-182 has
oh,
that song where it's like, "Oh, we'll celebrate Halloween on Christmas. We'll be like Jack
oh,
and Sally, Nightmare Before Christmas,"
yeah,
tapping into that whole, like, that
yeah,
Hot
there you
Topic
go.
brand, right? Like,
And, okay, so Code Fairy, because that took place near the end of the One-Year War, and I remember aren't there scenes I think they did Thanksgiving.
no, they do a jack-o'-lantern.
Is it Jack okay,
Yeah,
so
so they have a
maybe
jack-o'-lantern, and then they do celebrate Christmas at the end.
okay, the
Yeah, so
Christmas dinner, maybe that's what I'm thinking about the Thanksgiving, but
yeah.
yeah, so they do the Halloween. So,
Mhm.
I tell you, I think in the future, we're gonna look at Code Fairy and say that's like one of the most underrated Gundam stories because even the new type plot, there's a little new type plot there.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I have been on that like since it came out. Is like, I mean, well, maybe not since it came out. It was like 2 or 3 weeks after it came out. You and I were kind of like, wait a second, this game is being slept on. Like,
Yeah.
not only is it everything that we've said that or everything that we as Gundam fans said that we wanted, right? We were like, okay, we love the gameplay from GBO2, but we don't like the PvP. We want a PvE game, with a story and characters that we can bond with, and it's like, so Code Fairy hits all those,
Yeah.
um, but
I
I
think at
guess
the end of the day, it leaned too much into the gameplay about like the time, because every mission is timed, and then like
right,
you get that your score based on the time, so it becomes more
it
of
was
a
gamified, like,
yeah, than just like a simulator. Like I'd rather it be. I mean, this is really what they need to do now that I'm thinking about it. Just make it where each level is more of okay. Here's the tools, or here's your mobile. Figure out what to do.
dude,
You know.
they just need to make it like Metal Gear Solid 5, where it's like you got the mission, it's open-ended, there's no time limit. You can approach the mission however you wanna do it. It's like, okay, do you wanna go in the front door guns blazing, or do you wanna sneak around the back? Do you wanna disable communications? Like, what's the
Oh,
what's the way to approach it?
Okay, well, let's add to that. I know we're getting a little off topic, but hey, that's how we do our show. Um, what if it is like Metal Gear Solid 5 where you are a soldier on the ground? Or maybe you're a pilot too, but
Yeah.
and you're only in a mobile suit like if you want to, but then you got to worry about okay, they have a lot of anti-mobile suit weapons around. So like maybe disable those first.
Exactly. You gotta do some work on the ground to make sure that when you do attack with the mobile suits that you are capable of doing it and you're not gonna get overwhelmed, which is kind of what you have to do in Metal Gear Solid. It's like, you really can't go in guns blazing typically, um, because you'll
Yeah,
get shot pretty quick.
right. You have to
Uh,
like watch for snipers or you know what? And that would be cool too, because let's say then as you progress in the game, you can then go back to levels, but then you can even load out with a mobile suit that's kitted out. But what could it could be a similar system to GTA where like, okay, detection mobile suit, and then they send in like a whole bunch of so you can play older missions, but the more if you just come in with a mobile suit, they'll just call in the defense or something. But that could
right.
be so it could be a way to constantly make it replayable each mission. Anyway, that's another podcast, and we need to
Yeah.
write this down. Well, okay, Halloween Gundam game.
Ooh,
Does that
okay.
does that even exist? Because with all the video games I play, I even think of okay, what's a Halloween video game to me? It's Castlevania. It's got the organs playing in the soundtrack most of the time. You're slaying vampires.
Well, what about something like Dead by Daylight, right? You know,
Oh yeah, that's 100% like made to be.
Yeah, I love the fact that it's asymmetrical, right? And honestly, an asymmetrical Gundam game would be pretty awesome because if one player gets to play as like the Gundam and then everyone
Oh
else is Xeon pilots and they have to like achieve a certain goal, like maybe they're trying to gas a colony or something, and it's like, oh no, here comes the Gundam that can, take you out in one hit kind of thing. Like,
wow, I love what because and then it could be the reverse where it's like a group of GMs and then a Goof custom
yep,
is
Norris Packard shows up on the field and it's
yeah, that's
yeah,
a good idea, and I would love the idea of like, you it's more of about damage to your mobile suit where it's like, "Hey guys, just to let you know, my sensor's out, so I have to now my vision is limited." And maybe it like changes to where it's like through the cockpit instead of like the sensor or something like that where or maybe you lose your arm and it's like or my beam saber ran out. And
yeah,
like you're having to like talk about the weapons in your loadouts to try to because yeah, that would definitely work because that's the other thing, talking about Halloween, like when initially designing the enemies, Xeon and Gundam, they obviously made them look menacing. Like
mhm.
even the Zabi's castle, well, it's just a bunch of spikes that were sticking up. It looks like Dracula's castle. And yeah, anytime Amuro had to go up against something, even when the Zaku 2s first showed up in the colony with the mono eye, and it's like, oh my god! And then knocking down the trees and um, yeah, 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 they did a good job with that. But okay, so Steven, what about you? What's like your favorite kind of Halloween show or movie to watch?
That's a good question. I'm honestly not a big Halloween guy. I mean, I get really excited around the holidays anyway, so, like, I love, you know, decking out the house with stuff, but I've never been, like, a big horror guy. But,
Yeah, I've realized lately it's very interesting. So the Saw movies,
mhm,
you're
yeah.
familiar with them? Have you watched them all?
I man, I think I dropped off at, like, Saw 4.
Okay. I haven't seen the last 3. And I think there's like 10 or 11. But it's interesting because my youngest wanted to watch them, so I was been rewatching it with him, and it's funny because it's maybe just as art evolves, it didn't seem as bad
Yeah,
as I remember when I first saw it. I was like, "Interesting, this actually looks very cartoony." Almost like when you'd see pixel graphics and think, "Whoa, these graphics are amazing."
right.
Seeing the gore in the Saw movies, I think what really helps to sell it though is when someone's acting very well that they're scared.
Yes. I mean,
That
Cary Elwes does an amazing job
yeah,
in that first one, like
he kind of has this scary side to him, and it pays off because he ends up being a bad guy. But
mhm.
Yeah, so but here's something interesting. So my youngest got out of school early, and we went to go see Smile 2,
Okay.
but we left after
Wow.
after about maybe 30 minutes. Uh, like even for me, it was uncomfortable, and it was more about the gore,
Yeah.
like and not necessarily like a person acting. And it was because it was in the movie theater, and it was doing it. It's like a jump scare, but they were combining it with knowing something gross is going to happen. So
Yeah.
I and that's something I would probably watch, but I could tell he was uncomfortable, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine with." And I was like, so that type of horror to me is more of the shocking horror. It's like
Yeah,
an unearned.
and gore in and of itself doesn't really there's not a lot of payoff in that.
Right.
Like the type of horror movies that really stick with me are the ones where there's a lot of unknown. So like White Noise with Michael Keaton.
Oh,
I'd like
what? Yeah.
I've probably said this before, but like the two things, like the two kind of horror fantasy things that scare me are ghosts and aliens, and it's only because those are the two that are the most plausible to me, like that could actually exist in real life. Like vampires, werewolves, it's like that stuff doesn't scare me because I know it's not real. But ghosts and aliens, man, that's a
So, I loved horror movies growing up so much. Like I watched them all. Like I loved gore, but it was like for me, like the stuff in Evil
right.
Dead
That's like
2.
Army of Darkness. It's like it's
Yeah,
fun gore. It's not like
exactly, and that's what helped because it's like it's centered around this character that's reacting to everything, and you like how he's reacting. Even the first Evil Dead, it was more of an artistic way to be gory because it was like the first time. That's what it was known for, like showing really crazy stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but and then like I love Jason, but to me it's because Jason was just it was like this fantasy beast, you
Well,
know.
and in a way, we root for Jason, right? Like
Yeah,
it goes back to what we were talking about around vengeance and like justice, right? While the kids in Friday the 13th movies, they then in and of themselves, they don't deserve to die. But there is like, okay, Jason is punishing generational sins that are happening, right? Like he recognizes that the only reason he exists is because these people that were supposed to be taking care of him weren't. And so then when he sees it going on in the future, he takes it out on them. And so it's the
yeah,
same sort of like, I think human beings, like, in general, we kind of have this bloodlust in us that we love to see justice exacted upon people. We love the Punisher, we love Batman
yeah.
because it's like when we see, you know, the gang member that tortures and beats kids, and it's like, "Oh, yeah, now the Punisher's gonna cut his fingers off," and it's like, "Ooh," there's like, it's disgusting, but at the same time, there's like a, "Ooh, you know what? They deserve it," kind of thing.
Kinda like Shar blowing off Cecilia Zobby's head. But
Exactly,
yeah,
and so
yeah,
when you get that from Requiem for Vengeance, all of a sudden it's like, "Wait a second, even though the Gundam's the bad guy in this show, it's like, well, these Zeon kinda deserve it." I mean, especially
yeah,
when you think about, like, Arhoon, how quickly she pulled a gun on people and the doctor is so if we were doing horror movie tropes, like, the doctor is, like, the virgin character. Like, did you ever watch Cabin in the Woods?
yeah, I know
So
you're
the
talking about.
doctor
Yeah,
is the virgin, he's the one that is supposed to survive everything because he's the one who's not, like, exacting revenge on everybody and taking out his frustration and anger on everybody.
yeah. No, that's a good point, and I think that's, something really cool about, uh, Requiem for Vengeance that when I see people complain about it, it's like, I think it's valid, people can have their complaints, but I think as someone that loves storytelling, there is a lot of little things that it's doing without it being in your face. But if you were to dissect it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. That's really cool that this character is this way. Even by the end, I really think they set up that stab into the Gundam EX. That's almost a scare uh thing because you're like,
Yeah,
okay, it's gonna work. You're in this swell of sympathy for both characters at that moment, and then all of a sudden, bam! And but at the same time, when you see the goof do that, you're like,
and
"Yeah,
doesn't the
that's what a
music
goof."
drop out?
What?
Like, doesn't the music drop out when that happens? Like, I
Yeah.
I feel like there's this,
It
like,
was a
crescendo.
yeah, it was like it, like, all happened, and then, like, you can feel it. And the other thing that worked is when they introduced the goof customs, they were badasses. So, when they do it, there's this feeling in your head where it's like, "No, but the Goofs were being the badasses that they are,
Yeah.
and so there's so many different elements that came together that made that. And you know what was really cool? I keep overlooking, and I made a GIF of it. Is at the end when the HLVs go up into space and they make it dock in the Musai. Now, I don't remember seeing that before,
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it, like, in animation like that. We've
but
always seen the Komusai.
yeah, exactly. But like that, I think that was a perfect little detail to add that, and just to see the ship stuff like that, it made me think, oh, I cannot wait. Hopefully, with another Unreal Engine 5 Gundam, they start doing more of this space stuff, you know, because I think it would look really good.
I think so too, yeah. Um,
Yeah, Jason is like Minotaur in the Maze, the Force. I'm not familiar with Minotaur in the Maze. Is that a Hercules thing? Jason and the Argonauts? Oh,
yeah,
Jason is like the
yeah,
Minotaur
the
in the
character
Maze,
Jason.
and that's a Hercules thing, right? The Minotaur in the Maze.
I mean, it's definitely Greek mythology. I forget who the god is that creates the Minotaur and puts him in there as like a guardian of the maze. My
Oh,
Greek
okay.
mythology is terrible.
I'm gonna look into that because I love it when you can like trace story elements back, and it's like, oh, that's a neat concept that now we're seeing and everything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, and it just goes to show that like there's nothing new under the sun, right? Every story is a human story at the end of the day.
yeah.
Um, and I think we talked about that in regard to like Transformers One, where it's like y- the
Oh yeah.
the story might be about robots, but it's a human story, like about corruption and about um,
Yeah, yeah, I'll always remember Transformers 1 is such an excellent movie wrapped in as something I don't care about, and that's sentient robots. Like it's so interesting. Because even I remember I was scrolling Amazon and I saw the Optimus Prime action figure, and I was like, "Oh, I remember that from that movie. That's so good." But oh man, if they made that live action somehow, like or Unreal Engine 5,
there you go, boom.
I bet people would have liked that a little better. But anyway, no, I think that's it. That's the end. I think we can, really, it's all up to anyone's opinion, really. But I really do think Requiem for Vengeance is like an awesome Gundam entry that falls right onto Halloween. Like, I feel like I'm going to start like every October. I make sure I do a watch because it's
Yeah.
not a long watch. It,
No, it's not. I mean, it
yeah,
basically is a movie, right?
it
Two and
is.
a half hours roughly.
Great idea for them to do that because I can take breaks and there's always the beginning that's almost kind of connecting in a way, whether it's through what they're talking about previously. And that's a good way to go about it. So,
Awesome.
all right. Well, yeah. Anything else to add? Well, I'll add really like I brought up at the beginning. Oh, you know what I should bring up? Our
Mafty being having a
no,
having a
Art
jack-o'-lantern.
Rovo Gundam.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, because we
Yeah,
were
I
just
need to.
talking
I
about
need
the
to
Real
get the
Grade
new.
2.0.
Yeah, I need to get the new graphic up. I made a new one that's going to be used on the stream because when I build the RX-78-2 Real Grade 2.0, I'm going to do a Art Rovo stream. So, yeah, remember, guys, link in the description because if you use my code, you get free shipping if you buy two things. That's a pretty good deal. And there's
Yeah,
usually two things to get.
and Adam gets nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, yeah, I get nothing. I am just helping out. So,
No,
no, that's
no, I
cool.
mean, like, yeah, I love Art Robo, honestly, like, um, super fast shipping, had, like, a really sweet note thrown in there, with the order,
Oh,
which was
yeah.
awesome,
And the
and
Yu-Gi-Oh
Yu-Gi-Oh
cards?
cards,
Yeah,
right?
we're gonna next time we meet, we need to bring our cards in battle. Um,
Exactly. You're
yeah.
going down, Yugi.
Well, cool. Well, yeah, thanks. Have a good Halloween, hopefully, or have a happy Halloween if it's like late for you. But
Yeah, you guys don't get a tummy ache.
yeah, no, I'm avoiding. I was only able to fit in this Batman costume by avoiding candy. So, all right, well, we'll talk later. See y'all.